Hello, I'm Sally Wiener Grotta, and this is What If, Why Not, How? Where I ask people who have interesting stories and ideas questions that are on my mind. My guest today is Guadalupe Garcia McCall, the national best-selling award-winning author of several young adult novels, some short stories for adults, and numerous poems. Guadalupe has received too many honors to list, but here are some of them. The Prestigious Pura Belpre Award, a Westchester Young Adult Fiction Award, and the Tomás Rivera Mexican-American Children's Book Award. She currently teaches fiction in the MFA Creative Writing program at Antioch University. I definitely want to talk to you about that. She lives in San Antonio, Texas, where she's working on catch this. She's working on 4 novels coming from Bloomsbury and Tu Books that's going to be published between 2024 through 2027. Now, I'm someone who just is finishing up a novel after 6 or 7 years, so I'm in awe of that. Her recent books include the gothic borderland novel Echoes of Grace. I just finished it. Wait till you read this one. Plus the romantasies Secret of the Moon Punk and Hearts of Fire and Snow. The latter 2 she wrote with Dr. David Bowles. Welcome, Guadalupe. I am so delighted you're here with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. I want to share whatever you want to talk about today.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like you to start off by reading from your latest book, the Hearts of Fire and Snow, please.
I would love to. So this is Hearts of Fire and Snow, and it's coming out June 11th. So what we're looking at is an advanced reader's copy. Now, what has happened up to now is that our main character, who lives the present, is experiencing a little bit of doubts as she goes skiing with her boyfriend. Below us, I can see the tiny form of Jackson's parents skiing down the snowy slope, following each other like 2 slick seals in action, perfectly in tune with each other in joyful bliss. Look at them, I say. They're so nuts, Jackson said, coming to stand right behind me and laughing as he leans over to plant a wet kiss on my cheek. Pretending to push my hair out of my face, I wipe the remnants of that kiss away. It feels cold and damp on my skin. I was going to say in tune, I tell him, perturbed by his mittened hand lingering on the small of my back. I want to be nice, to laugh at his little joke, because I know that that's how he deals with stress. But I can't. The truth is, I don't find him funny anymore. Most of the time, I'm annoyed by his immaturity, especially his disinterest in issues of social justice. It all points to the aversion to growing up, and I just don't know if I want to stick around, waiting for him to grow up. I know that's what our parents expect from us, that we'll end up together, our families joined emotionally and financially. It makes sense to them, since our businesses seem to work so well in tandem. But I'm not sure that's what's going to happen. Not if Jackson doesn't shape up soon, before I lose my patience and dump them all together. Jackson nuzzles my cheek. Hey, why don't we ditch the skis and go find a nice quiet place with a fireplace where we can snuggle up together? Stop it. That's not what I came here to do, I tell him, pushing him away from me. Sheesh, he says, stepping back and fussing with his hair again. Talk about snow and ice and everything not so nice. What's with you these days? What are you talking about? You're so cold and distant for months now, and not just to me. That's why everyone started calling you the ice princess at school. Ever since you came back from Mexico City, you're different. Moody and introverted, not fun like you used to be. Jackson looks wounded. Despite all my reservations about him, his words move me. I don't want to hurt him. He's the only boy I've ever cared for. The only boy I ever wanted to be with. That's the problem, though. He's still acting like a boy. But I'm growing. Inside, I can feel myself evolving. Peering down the difficult pist below, I remember vividly the day it all happened, when things changed for me. I was in Mexico City with my padrino at the end of May, but as usual, he was too busy to spend time with me, so I hired a guide and went hiking, walking around the park with Tina, who's never been out of the country her entire life. The guides, Elia and Norma, a husband and wife team with their own tour bus, picked us up at the hotel and gave us the experience of a lifetime. Tina had a blast, but while she was oohing and eyeing and taking pictures of absolutely every single thing, I stood at the foot of that beautiful snowy mountain range, Iztaccíhuatl, and had a moment. As Norma and Elia recounted the story of Iztac and Popocá, I felt a deep connection to the mountain they call the Sleeping Woman. For those of you who don't know the story, Norma said, pointing at the mountain range across the way, Popocá was a captain in the emperor's army, in love with his daughters, Lady Iztac. She loved him too. So when word came that he had died in battle, she was devastated. I would be too, Tina said, holding her backpack higher up on her shoulder. To make things worse, Ellie said, the emperor gave her hand in marriage to Sina Khan, who coveted the kingdom and saw her only as a prize. What he didn't know was that Sina Khan had secretly conspired to have Popocá sent to his death. Norma pressed on. So, aggrieved, Lady Stock chose to hang herself. Horrible, I said, shuddering because I was suddenly ice cold. Then Popocá, who was very much alive, arrived to find her lying dead. He picked her up and walked with her into the highlands, where he begged, no, demanded that the gods bring her back. But instead, they turned her into volcanoes, one dormant and one active, I whispered, putting it together, the story with the images I'd seen printed on calendars and circulars and many other things in my lifetime. It occurred to me then that the fate of those star-crossed lovers was reminiscent of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, yet much more poignant, much more tragic. At the thought of Iztac losing Popocá to the hands of war because of a jealous lover, my heart constricted in my chest, and I began to wonder, what good is love if it can't be protected, cherished, allowed to blossom? Why are we here if not to love each other? Why were we created, given breath and life, if not to help each other grow, prosper, and live rich and meaningful lives? I'm going to stop there.
You have me hooked. I'll be on the pre-order list. It's marvelous. You clearly are one thing we've talked about before is you are tapping into your heritage with this, with the legends and such. I'm wondering, in writing Hearts of Fire and Snow, what were some of your biggest challenges and or joys in writing it? What is it that you discovered in the process?
My biggest joy was discovering that she had this heart that was at once ancient and wise, but also naive and new. And that was my biggest joy because I went on a journey with her and I saw her grow. She thinks she knows what she wants. She wants to make a difference in the world, but yet she doesn't know how, what that's going to look like. And she knows that it doesn't look like just going skiing and having fun and making out and the things that young people do, which are normal things. She is she knows that's not what she wants out of her life, that there's more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's her ancient wisdom, right? That's her
Yes.
ancient knowledge from her ancestors, which are kind of like biting at her, clicking some at her DNA, and she's trying to figure it out. So, my biggest challenge is how to make that world come to life, but at the same time, keep that other world right there at the forefront too, so
Mm-hmm.
that they blended together and created this wonderful human who is evolving, like she said.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
was the biggest challenge and also the biggest joy.
It sounds delightful. And this is one of the books you wrote with David Bowles,
Yes,
right?
this is our
Yes.
second book. Yeah.
What is that process like for you? How does one of you take the lead and the other fills in, or are you going back and forth constantly with the manuscript? How do you go about doing that?
Well, the idea for the first book, for this book, came to me fully formed as an idea, like as a real quick summary. I knew that I wanted to tell the story of of two people, like in the lake house with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves. I
Yes.
knew that she would be in the present and that she would be somehow connected to the boy in the past, and that there would be some mechanism, some magical item that would connect them, because I
Mm-hmm.
wanted it to be like that. Because in the movie, Sandra Bullock, of course, saves Keanu Reeves because he's already dead when she's communicating through the mailbox. And I thought, okay, who is she? Well, she's a young immigrant girl who's lost her grandmother, the last living relative
Mm-hmm.
in Songolica, and now a gang member, a little guy, wants to own her. And he says, "You're going to be my woman. Don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of you." And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, "Yeah, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. You're some mocoso, and I don't want that. But he has a gang behind him, so she's fearing for her life. So she flees to the United States to go and find her madrina, who lives in San Antonio, who might actually know where her father is, who because her father left when she was very young.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that was going to happen. And then I thought, okay, so who's the boy? Well, the boy, I thought, also has to be on the run. And there has
Mm-hmm.
to be something really extraordinary happening that he's being chased from by, just like she is. And I thought, well, he's a Mexica warrior during the fall of Tenochtitlan. And there you have it. The Spanish have decimated everything. He is a warrior. And because he's a warrior, they're going to give chase. They're going to try to hunt him down, and
Mm-hmm.
he's going to try and escape. His whole family's dead because of the devastation and the disease, the pox. And so he has to be on the run too. And I don't know how they're going to connect, but they're going to connect. So I asked David to join me in writing the book because I don't know anything about the fall of Tenochtitlan. And when I realized it would take me like 5 years to learn the culture, the language, the history, and then maybe another 5 years to write it, I don't know. It would be a ridiculous, long undertaking.
Like what I go through. Yes.
Right. It would be a very long process because it
Yes.
would be a
Mhm.
process of learning an
Yes.
entire different way of thinking and listening
Mm-hmm.
and looking. But David teaches Nahuatl at the University of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. And he's a historian. And he's an academic and loves to dig into this kind of thing. And this is his mole. And I thought, I'm just going to ask him to help me. But when I was right there in front of him, about to ask him to help me with the research, it hit me that he could write the boy. And if he wrote the boy, I could write the girl. And this would
Mm-hmm.
be fast. I would be learning as we go. And then it wouldn't take so long. So he immediately, when I proposed it, he immediately said yes. I mean, he was like hooked. And he said, "Oh my God." And he started thinking, like we were having dinner. I had taken him to dinner, and he started thinking, and he said, "They just found a conch, and this conch has hieroglyphs, and they
Mm-hmm.
think that it's during the fall, during the Aztec Triple Alliance, and that it might be a moon conch, something used in a ceremony to the moon goddess." And he goes, "Wouldn't it be funny if his mother was a moon priestess, but she's gone, and all he has left is this conch. And out of desperation, he blows on it, and they connect because she somehow has it in the future. And I said, oh my God, she found it the night before they left on the beach. And she's carrying it as like this thing that reminds her of home. And I mean, we were just off to the races. And I'm not going to say it was easy because it was more of a discovery process. So every
Sure.
time we went to a conference, every time we were doing a book talk, anytime we were together for any reason in the author life that we lead, because we're in a lot of things together in conferences and festivals. And we would find a corner and go talk about our book that we were going to write. And so that went on for like two and a half years. And then I had moved to Oregon from Texas. And he said, well, I can't see you as often anymore, but I really want to start planning the book. So we got together on Zoom and we put together an outline of the novel as we were seeing it. And we were just playing with this outline and talking and playing with the outline. And then over the next few months, we played with the outline some more. And then when we felt like we had a working outline, the story had been fleshed out, we started writing. And his is the first chapter. It's the prologue. And so he sent it to me. And so what we did is we sent each other one chapter at a time. So he sent me the first one. And I'll never forget when I read it. I read it and I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. This guy can write. I'm going to have to live up to that. I'm going to have to step up my game, because he wrote something that was beautiful. It was lyrical. It was epic. And it set up the stage. It was almost like he just set the stage and said, go. That was like, oh my God, this is really happening. So I wrote the first chapter and I felt like, man, I'm gonna throw down. So I created this first chapter, and out of the blue, something happened in the chapter that was not in our notes, but I sent it anyway. And he wrote back to me, he goes, OMG, after he read it. He goes, OMG, I did not see the ghost of the grandmother coming. I just didn't know you were going to have ghosts in there. And I go, neither did I.
The characters do surprise us sometimes, don't they?
Yeah, that's what happens. That's the magic of writing.
Yeah.
You think you know what you're going to write, and you get in there, and it's just so much more beautiful than you ever expected when the characters do things on their own. Yeah. So that's how we did it. We did back and forth. And then the second novel, the same thing. We talked about it for a while. Then we planned it. On the second one, we were even more detailed. No, actually, it was about the same detail, chapter by chapter by chapter. The Moon Conch document is 43 or 49. I think it's 49 pages, single spaced in chapter by chapter summaries. So you know that it's detailed.
Yes.
And so, and even then, we still surprised each other.
Marvelous.
Yeah, that's our process.
Do you have a third book plan? Is one of the books you plan one with David again?
Well, before I answer that, I'm gonna add one thing. The other part of the process is, okay, so I read the last chapter he sent me, and I give him notes with comments. Right. And then I write actually, I go back to my previous chapter, like chapter 5. I read the notes he gave me. Then I read his chapter, give him notes, and then I write the next chapter. So what is happening is we're actually writing and revising
as you go. Marvelous.
And so by the time we're done with that first draft, it's actually like a third or fourth draft. It's very well edited because we went through it and we went through it and we went through it. And sometimes you would even say, hey, I'm adding this, so you're going to have to go back and seed this in chapters 5, 6, and 7. And he would go, okay, so we would do that. And it was all very organic, but also very well timed, I think.
Wonderful.
So now I have personally 3 new books coming that are a series called Seasons of Sisterhood.
Okay.
And these 3 books are based in the same world as Summer of the Mariposas, which is my national bestseller that gets read in a lot of middle schools. So this is going to be the follow-up series. Every story, every sister gets their own story in their own season. So Summer of the Mariposas was the original, and it was the Odyssey, a retelling of the Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have Fall of the Fireflies, and it's a retelling of Antigone because it's the twins.
Oh.
And then we have Fall of the Flyer, Spring of the Cicada. The Spring of the Cicada is a retelling, and it's for the smart sister. So it's a retelling of Frankenstein. And then and then the last one is the baby. The baby Pita gets her own story, but she's grown up now. And it's Winter of the Witch Moth, and it's a retelling of Beowulf.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's kind of like an arc for all the sisters. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So, I'm doing that on my own, and that's what's coming in the next 3 years. But on the side, David and I have started our vampire book.
Oh, that's going to be a wild one. That's going to be great.
So, the thing is that in Tlaxcala, the indigenous people of Tlaxcala have an indigenous vampire myth.
Okay.
And so it's mostly women, but some men can become vampires, where the original priestess that was wandering down with a tribe to come down to Mexico City was against her brother, and he cursed her and said, from now on, because she was a priestess, from now on, you and your people will stay here, and you will do because she didn't want him to do human sacrifice. So he said, so you're going to do what you didn't want me to do. You're going to feast. You're going to, at night, you will remove your legs, fly up over houses, and feast on the blood of the innocent, the blood of babes. Mm-hmm. And so that's the legend that these women it's by blood. You just wake up one morning and you realize that you're one of the Tlahuepuchi, which is the vampire genre. Or not genre, the vampire people or descendants of that first priestess. And so you wake up and you realize that you are going mad with thirst and that you have to feast on a child.
Isn't it interesting that almost every culture I know has legends of women being punished for getting above their station, and often
we're trying to do the right thing.
Yes. Well, that's being above their station. They're trying to tell the men what to do. They are often cursed to do something bad to children. Yes. That is quite common. Lilith is a very early example. The legendary first wife of Adam, who chose to flee the Garden of Eden because she wanted to be an equal to Adam, didn't want to be below him. And so she was cursed as a baby stealing demon. Yeah. Yeah. It's quite common. And I find
many cultures, ancient cultures. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very strange. Now, I just read your Echoes of Grace. Yes. Marvelous book, dear. Marvelous. I have to admit, I slammed it down on the first chapter. Yeah. I'm not going to go where it went because I want that surprise, but it was very upsetting. But it was so beautifully written, I had to pick it up. You combine elements of Gothic speculative novel with the cultural setting of the Texas-Mexican border, and then the supernatural border between life and death. It's so many threads in your tapestry. What I found impressive about the story, now this is a book meant for young adults, although people like me love it. What I found impressive is that it doesn't shy away from tackling really tough, important undercurrents and themes that force readers to look at the dark side of reality. Right. First, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to go further into that concept, but what was the seed of the novel and how did it evolve?
Well, the seed, and I didn't know I was writing this. I didn't, like most of my novels, I don't really set out to do it. They kind of come to me.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so this novel came to me because my children were coming home from college. Both boys, I have three boys, but the two boys that were in college, and they're big boys. They're like 6 feet tall. And I thought, okay, I gotta go to the grocery store. I have nothing in the house. As an empty nester, we just go out to eat all the time. So I ran to the grocery store. I could not get through in this little country. I lived in the country, in this little country road. I couldn't get through. There were a bunch of cars, police, medical, emergency vehicles.
Mm.
And I was like, something's going on, but I couldn't get through. So I ran around it, took me a little longer, went shopping, came home. My children arrived. And they put on the television. They're watching television when I arrived. And they said, Mom, did you hear what happened? And I said, no, what happened? And they said, a woman was coming out. She was leaving to go to work, a young woman here in Somerset. And she was leaving to go to work. And she left her 2-year-old with her sister on the porch.
Okay.
And the little boy somehow got away from the sister, ran out into the driveway, and the mama drove him over, and he passed. And I was devastated. I kept watching the news. I was horrified. I want to say I was traumatized. I was traumatized. Yeah. I remember cutting carrots and just trying to make a caldo in this traumatic state and just being out, I'm so angry. Yeah. And my children, I have one son who's like very close to me out of the all three, but he sat on the couch with me hours later when I was ranting and raving about where are the organizations, where are the people who can help a young woman who's trying to go to work get decent care for her child. Where is the government in times of need? Because if the government were to help her when she's trying to get ahead in life, then she could have put him in a daycare, in a safe place. Or maybe she could have hired a nanny who could have kept him. The other young sister maybe was not the best choice. I don't know. I don't know the situation, but I know there has to be a better way. And so I was ranting. And my son said, Mom, I don't understand why you're so upset. I said, well, because. And I started repeating things. And he said, yes, but you're upset and you don't even know them. Mm. And I said, and I remember it vividly. I looked at him and I said, I was that young girl. I wasn't just the girl on the porch. I was the girl in the car. When we were in college, your tia, Vicky, and I took care of each other's children so that we could both go to college and go to work. We would get the kids, put them in one little stroller together, and then put a colcha on top of it and walk in the snow with my husband behind us with the backpacks and the baby bags. He was like, the carrier, the one that carried everything. And we would walk all the way to the university. And then we'd get to the student center, get that colcha, put it on the floor, put the kids there, and take turns, the three of us, taking care of those two toddlers. Mm-hmm. And I said, and where was the government to give us help? Mm-hmm. Nowhere. Mm-hmm. Where were the organizations, the programs, the things that could have helped us during that horrible, difficult time where we had to fix schedules? And my sister, I'll never forget it. She would hold me, she would grab me, hold me tight and kiss me like Mexicans kiss each other. Mwah, mwah, mwah. And she would like smacking, and then she would say, take care of him, Lupe. Take care of him and make sure nothing happens to him, because if something happens to him, I'm gonna gut you like a fish. And I was like, what? Like that, you're a crazy woman. And then she would say, no, like those lab frogs, that's going to be you. If something happens to him, you better take care of him. And at that time, I didn't understand why she was reacting like that, what fears she had. Well, I had fears too, but I had my husband with me. She was a single mom, and that was all she had. And I understand now what the fear was of leaving the one thing you love more than anything else in the world in the capable hands of somebody who you love. Because what happens if something happens to that child? How are you going to make it up to each other? How are you going to get beyond that loss? And so my son was like, wow, I didn't know that, Mom. And I said, yeah, that was because I have an older son. I said, that was your brother on that colcha with your cousin Dean on that colcha. And my other kids didn't know because by the time they showed up, I was already a teacher and we were doing well.
Yeah.
But they had not seen that poverty. They had not
Right.
seen that struggle. They had seen some struggles, but not like that.
Right.
Not poverty, not, I don't know where my next meal's coming from. None of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to bed and I had a dream. Grace came to me out of the blue. She was sitting, I was walking on a river, along the river, and she was sitting there on the riverside, and she was holding something to herself. And I knew her name was Grace. I didn't know who she was. I just knew her name was Grace, and I knew that she was sad. And I said, hey, Grace, what you got there? And she turned around and she went like this. And when she opened her hands, there was a little caterpillar. The little caterpillar you see on the top.
Yes, in the beginning,
And that caterpillar turned into like a cocoon. And then it turned into this beautiful moth that you see there. At the time, I didn't know what it was called, but it turned into this thing. And so I figure at some point in my education, I knew that caterpillar turned white because it was in my dream. And then it started fluttering and lost its wings. It desiccated. It died. There were worms crawling out of it, and then it just faded away. And I remember I'm dreaming this, and I said, what does that mean? And she looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, I don't know. And I woke up from that dream not understanding what it was, but knowing that I had to write it down. That I had just been gifted something, like I always am when I'm going to visions or dreams of things. And I wrote it down, and then through the months and the years, because years went by, every once in a while she would come to me and show me things, give me things, share secrets with me, and I would just write these bits and pieces, poetry, dialogue, just scenes, descriptions, and I would just write them down and put them in a folder, and I called it Grace Fully Letting Go. Gracefully letting go. Because she was like a little bit at a time. And so in 2016, it was time to submit a project for my MFA Creative Writing thesis, which was my final project. And I was in the middle of teaching full-time, 8th grade, but teaching full-time, 6 classes a day, in an MFA program, taking other classes, and writing a novel called All the Stars Denied, writing that because I was under contract. So these 3 things were going on, and I was suddenly being asked to do a 4th thing, and also raising a family because the kids were still in the house. And I was like, oh my God. Well, not in the house, but they were still they were college kids that came home every weekend. So anyway, I thought, what am I going to do? I don't have any other stories. And I can't submit All the Stars Denied because it's under contract. And even though they probably would let me, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. So I challenged myself, and I went in there and I saw that folder, and I took it out and I started putting all the pieces into an outline, all the scenes. And when I did that, I was like, oh, there it is. It's a story. So I sent it in, they accepted it, and I spent that semester writing 2 novels. And that's how this got done.
I am so in awe of your productivity. I'm going to have nightmares about you.
I have to say, I have a very supportive husband.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, in Echoes of Grace, you tackle some very difficult subjects. You rape. You're dealing with violence against women. You're dealing with a child's death due to negligence by one sister. And yet this book is for a young adult readership.
Right.
How do you balance such difficult subjects with the sensitivities of a young adult readership? Well, it's just that's the question. Yeah, it's a tough one for me.
I used to teach for 29 years, K through 12. I've taught 6 all the way to 12th grade. And I know they deal with difficult things all the time. And they talk to each other about difficult things. They have lost the way we have lost. They know children die. They've seen it. They've heard it. They've suffered through it. They know people get raped. They know women are getting killed in the world. They've seen it on television, on social media. Nothing in that book is things that they haven't discussed among themselves. So why not give them a book that is sensitively touching on those topics, that is coming from a place of truth, but also a place of sensitivity and a place of love that says, let's have this conversation. As an adult, I want you to have conversations with the adults in your world.
Yeah.
Let's read this book and talk to mom and dad, to aunt, uncle, grandma, anybody who might help you sort through the emotional things that you're going to experience in this book. Talk to your friends. Talk about the injustices. Talk about the social issues that are around this. Talk about how we can make things better for women in our world. Because I don't know if you know, but it's centered around women. It's centered around negligence, abuse, trauma, generational trauma, rape culture, femicide, the things they see, all of those things have been with us since the beginning of time.
Yes.
And always burdening women. So how do we talk to our young ladies about it? How do we show them a book that says, this does not feel right, this feels better? Where do we go? How do we navigate this thing that we call society? How do we navigate it as young adults and as young women about to go into that society?
And also, hopefully, have young men understand it also.
Right. And that's why Daniel is so important.
Yes.
I got a little,
Daniel's the male character in the book.
Yeah, the boyfriend.
Yes.
Grace's boyfriend. I wouldn't say that it's her boyfriend, it's boyfriend.
Right. He thinks otherwise, but she doesn't.
Right. He'd like to be her full boyfriend, but she's not so sure that that's for her yet. Right. And I like that about Grace. I like that she knows how to stand up for herself. And in all her trauma, I mean, let's face it, the girl is traumatized.
Yes.
In all her trauma, in all her crazy I want to say crazy moments, but the crazy visions, right? The chaos that those echoes bring into her life, the way they torture her, in all of that, she still knows how to say, this is the line. Yes. I'm drawing this line and you can't step over that line.
Yeah, I like that a lot myself.
I liked when she did that. When she said, I'm not a carnival ride.
Right. That was a wonderful line. That was a fabulous line. Yes.
Yeah, when she just looked at him, I mean, she's kind of having an echo with the psychedelic carnival and the music and the crazy smells and sounds. And she just like pushes through and says, I'm not a carnival ride. This is not going to happen.
For our audience, her echoes are a psychic ability that she inherits from her mother.
Right. And her grandmother. It's
the maternal line of the family.
Yeah. And of course, it's metaphorical. It's metaphorical for the generational trauma that we inherit from our mothers,
Right. Absolutely. Now, to go back to the concept, to finish up our discussion is we originally talked about how we both write by listening to our heritage, in conversation to our heritage. And I'm wondering, how does your heritage shape your creativity? What is the nature of that conversation?
I think I come from, from a storytelling family. And my grandmother, my tias, my mom, my dad, his compadres, their comadres, all these people in the rancho for my dad's side of the family, they would sit by the campfire and tell these stories about these big giant snakes with a hook at the end of the tail, and these ghosts that would come out of the woods, and I mean, Nahuales, and they would tell these stories, and I was always that kid who didn't go play. I
Yeah.
stayed there and listened. To me, that was more invigorating than going and playing with my cousins. And the same thing with my mom's family. We would go to her. It was a very tiny little village,
Mm-hmm.
tiny, very impoverished little village outside of Piedras Negras, and they would sit by in the kitchen and sewing and making tamales or whatever they were making, and they would be telling these stories, and I was always fascinated, so I came by it honestly. But
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like I'm informed by the things that I've seen, the things I've experienced, as much as what I have heard. And I'm not talking about just in the past, but also in the present. When I read something on my phone feed, or see something on television, I'm always taken back. I'm
Yes.
always taken back to the stories of my mother, my father, their families, and I'm always kind of like connecting dots. All of these things are just connected in my brain. And so the more I learn about my ancestors, the more those stories shape who I am and
Mm-hmm.
shape the way I view the world. I can't help but view the world through my lens. It's
Yes.
the lens I was given. I look at it like a sieve. It's everything that went in and was sorted through in this sieve. Everything that I collected from all that sorting through, it's all mine, but it also belongs to my ancestors,
Right.
and
Your sieve, yeah.
I owe it to them.
Yeah. Your sieve is what I call my creative chaos. I also come from a family of storytellers. All the women were
Yeah,
storytellers.
yeah,
So yeah, I think it's a necessity for certain types of writers.
yeah.
Um, One last question. As
Hmm.
much as I would like to keep going for hours with you, because I think we have a lot to talk about. Uh, but as a teacher of fiction, what is one of your top pieces of advice for young writers?
Every story has a reader. Every story will find its reader. Tell yours. Tell it in the unique way that is just your way of telling that story. And don't define yourself by what other people say or what other people are doing. Focus this way instead of looking that way or that way or that way. Look this way. Where are you going with this story that only you can tell?
Hmm.
And don't worry about what the world is doing. Your story will find its reader.
Wonderful advice. Absolutely wonderful. I'm sure your students are very lucky to have you as a fiction
Oh.
teacher.
I'm
Um,
very lucky to have them too. I learn from them too.
oh, yes, that's one of the fun things about teaching.
Yeah.
Thank you, Guadalupe, so much for being with me. My guest today was Guadalupe Garcia McCall. Her most recent books are Echoes of Grace, Secret of the Moon Conch, and Hearts of Fire and Snow, the latter two written with Dr. David Bowles. And we have another one coming out that she'll be co-writing with Dr. David. I look forward to reading that. You can connect with Guadalupe on her website, ggmccall.com, and on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we'll have those handles in the next slide. As for me, my two newest books are Of Being Woman, a collection of feminist science fiction from Noble Fusion Press, and Daughters of Eve from Bites Publishing, which is an essay-based workbook and journaling guide for exploring the nature of our lives today through the stories of the women of the Hebrew Bible, such as Eve, Rebecca, Deborah, and so forth. My website and blog are at sallywienergrotta.com, up there. And my videos are on YouTube. You'll be able to see Guadalupe there. And you can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and sometimes, not too often, on Blue Sky. Maybe someday on Substack. I haven't figured that one out. Thank you, Guadalupe, and thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.